What's up, guys? I want to do a quick video and I want to talk about a workaround for some of these smaller Sony cameras when you're shooting video. And as many of you may know, when you're using anything in the Alpha line like the A5100 or to a lesser extent the A6000, you can run into issues where the sensor overheats. And I absolutely love these cameras, price point, form factor, and I did a review. This is the A5100 and I did a review on this a few weeks ago. I still think it's one of the best deals in photography right now. $350 for a body. You can pretty much get an adapter and mount any lens to it. It's a lot of versatility in a very small package. I also like the fact that, you know, it's got the flip up screen here. So when I'm doing videos for the show, I've actually started using this camera pretty much since I got it because I can leave it set up. It's small, there's nothing to set up, and I've got a monitor built in, and it just works great. But the problem is after usually 10 minutes, sometimes less, who knows, the camera starts to overheat, and a lot of it has to do with the design in here, the lack of ventilation, and the fact that the processor is taking a readout from the sensor and processing that information, compressing it into a codec and writing it to the card. And what happens is it just starts to get hot, and as many of you know, once you see the yellow thermometer flashing, it's going to be game over until you turn the camera off and let it cool down, and that's a big buzzkill when you're making video. So I want to talk about a workaround that I'm using now for this, and I want to show you how I'm doing it. So come on over to the office and let's have a little behind the scenes look today. Okay, so we are in my office right now, and this is the Sony A5100 just sitting on the, mounted on the tripod, and I just leave it set up here all the time, so there's no setup. It doesn't take up a lot of space. I can move it if I need to, but I'm always ready to record video, and that is a major help for me. And so the workaround, we're actually not going to write to the card at all when we record video. We're just going to turn it on, and then I'm going to take an HDMI output on here. So this is a micro HDMI cable, which runs down into this box down here, which is the Blackmagic Hyperdeck Shuttle 2. This is actually the second one of these I've owned. I owned a Hyperdeck Shuttle 1, and I'll talk about the differences between the two. The 2 lets you record to the Apple ProRes codec, and so we'll talk about that in a second, but I just want to show you how this works right now. What it does is it writes to SSD cards. So these are just little hard drives. This is one from Crucial, and once this is formatted in your computer, I just simply slide this right into the Shuttle, and then what I do is it's just like a VTR deck over here. I just hit record once I've got signal, and I go ahead and record to that. Now I did some tests on this week, and my first test I did well over an hour and a half of recording, and it never overheated or did anything. It was great, and so it's capable of recording a lot of footage. So a lot of people know that you can do this setup. There's also the Atomos Ninja Star, I believe, is the same price point. And we'll talk about some of the upsides and the downsides to these, but how to set it up is a whole nother ballgame in what you're dealing with the footage, and that's what I want to get into in this video here. One of the first things that you need to do when you're setting this up to record off the HDMI output is this. You need to go into the menu settings, and I'm going to scroll all the way over, to the tool box here. And if you go into menu 2, you're going to see HDMI settings. And so what you want to do is set a few things. You want to set the HDMI resolution to 1080i. It does not work with 1080p, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And then HDMI info display, turn that off because once you plug in the cable, you won't be able to see anything. And then control for HDMI, I think it's optional. I'm not really using that, so mine's set to on, so that doesn't really matter. But the resolution does need to be set to 1080i. Here's the other catch in here that you need to remember to do. Now you can record video out of any mode on the Sony A5100. What you need to do is you need to actually make sure you're in movie mode. So you can indeed off the card record video in any mode. If I have this set to manual or shutter priority or aperture priority, it will not output the correct signal, and that is very important. You'll have a resolution mismatch. The footage is grainy, it's unusable, and I forgot that there was a movie mode on here because it's kind of hidden on this camera. It's actually in the menus. You got to make sure you're in movie mode. So once you're in there, basically you're good to go. So I just go ahead and come out of that, and so let's get out of the menu system here. And I've selected exposure, I'm good to go. And so everything is set up. Now, the cool thing is it does give you a clean HDMI output. So all the little numbers and readings on here, if you have your histogram up, it doesn't matter. None of that will output to the HDMI. It's just giving you the video signal as the camera sees it. So it's very cool. So I turn this around and I'm ready to shoot. So what we do at that point is just simply go down to the VTR, and you're going to make sure that you see this video light lit up. If that is not lit up, you do not have a video signal correct. So if it's set to 1080p or something like that, it's not going to work. And then I just hit the record button, I let it go. When I'm done, I come over and I hit stop, and everything is good to go. So on the computer, I want to take a look at some footage that I just did, just a little sample clip, and I want to see exactly what that HDMI signal is giving us. So I did this on the Sony, put it into the Hyperdeck, I took the hard drive out, and I mounted it, and that's what we're looking at here. So directly on the drive, I'm seeing my captured file here, and there's nothing you're going to see right off the bat until I start playing this, but it's just a sample clip of me coming on screen and grinning and waving and acting like an idiot and all that kind of thing. So one thing you're going to notice is if I zoom way in on this footage here, if you look around my glasses here, do you see those lines, those horizontal lines that are going across the footage? That is telling me that this footage is interlaced. Now, the camera is actually recording a true progressive 24 frame per second file when it uses the card, but what it's doing is it's doing a pull down when it's going out to the HDMI. And the reason it does that is most likely for compatibility with a variety of monitors, or if you want to hook it up to a television screen or something like that. So what we need to do actually to use this footage is I want it to be progressive. And the other thing you're going to notice here, if I look at the inspector over here, is that it did indeed record this at 29.97 frames per second. So that's the output of what we're getting off of the HDMI. So we can change that, and I will show you how to do that. There are a number of programs that you can use to do this. If you want a really good free one, I'll put a link in the show notes, but there's a program called MPEG Streamclip, and it's excellent. It's a great Swiss Army knife if you're doing anything with video. I'm actually using Apple Compressor here because, you know, I'm using it with Final Cut and everything else, and I created a preset, and it's just really easy to do. So what I'm going to do is show you how you did that preset. So the one thing is I have my Hyperdeck Shuttle set up to record in ProRes, and so I'm going to continue to use that as my codec. Now, there are different flavors of ProRes, and 422 is kind of the baseline codec that 422 utilizes, and then there's variants on that. And HQ is what we've got this set in. HQ is going to be a much bigger file size, and it is arguable as to whether or not you're going to actually notice a quality difference. It is possible if you have a really intensive color application thing that you're doing, like a green screen or something, that you might want that extra data in your file. Otherwise, they're going to create pretty big files, so that is up to you. ProRes 422, just the vanilla version, looks great, and it's a much smaller file size, so your mileage may vary. But anyway, you can select one of those, duplicate it, and it'll go down into the custom folder. And I renamed mine Reverse Telecine. And I'm going to click on that. I'm going to show you what to change in here to de-interlace your footage and change the frame rate. So if I go into the video tab over here, first thing you're going to want to do is under video properties is change your frame rate. That is if you want it to be 24p. If you want to stay at 29.97, then you can go in, you can leave it on automatic, or you can select that manually. I want mine to be true 24p, so I'm going to go all the way down to 23.976. In the field order, you're going to change to progressive because we want to get rid of the interlacing. The last thing you want to do is under quality, under retiming quality, you're going to want to select Reverse Telecine. And what this is going to do is it's going to transcode our video clip from interlace to progressive and change the frame rate. So now all I have to do is drag and drop the clip. I'm going to drag and drop my preset, and I'm going to say Start Batch, and it'll go ahead and start. And depending on how fast your computer is, that's how long it will take to do the file. This is pretty short, so it'll probably be pretty quick. One thing I want to say is if time is of the essence, or you don't have a real fast computer and this is taking too long, there are other options. And so, you know, in my case, I just needed something inexpensive that would work because this works right into my workflow and it's not a problem. And so I went with the $350 Hyperdeck Shuttle. Now, Atomos makes several models that are more expensive. Some of them are considerably more expensive. Some of them have a built-in monitor, and they're very nice, but they also do things like they will transcode your footage on the fly. They will take that HDMI signal and use their own processor to reinterpret that footage, so it's acting more like your card does on your camera. So just know that if you're using the Hyperdeck, it really is a plain Jane device, and it just does a few things, but it does them very well once you have this all configured. So I've got this clip done, and now if I go to the desktop, there's my Reverse Telecine file, and now when I go into this one and I scrub through the footage, I can see that I no longer have that interlacing, and this is actually operating now at 24p as I grin and smile. So anyway, I went ahead and recorded the end of this video already, and I talked about some other things about the Hyperdeck Shuttle 2, and let's check that out. So that's how I've handled the problem with overheating in some of these smaller cameras, and it may not be the perfect solution. There are some problems, and I'll talk about those a little bit. First of all, using the Hyperdeck Shuttle, I like the unit, and once you have it set up, it's pretty much you set it and go. The battery life is only about an hour, so you really do want to have it plugged in, but the battery life on these cameras isn't great either, so you want to get the external adapter that you just plug into where the battery goes, and then you plug that into the wall, and then you have endless supply of power. So once you're hit there, you're fine. The one big thing that's really frustrating about the Hyperdeck Shuttle is there's no indicator that tells you. You have a battery life indicator, but there's no indicator to tell you how much time is left on the disk. So you do need to know what's on the hard drive, if it's clear, how much space you have, what the file sizes are going to take up. I know I can get a little over 2 hours on a 250 gigabyte hard drive or around there. And so you're gonna have to watch your time on things too and know when you need to switch your drives out. But you do get a lot of time before that happens. It just would be really nice to have some kind of indicator on there telling you how much drive space is left. And that couldn't possibly be that hard to do, but anyway, that's where it is. The other thing I don't like is the form factor on these. They do great if you're in a studio like where I'm filming now, it's perfect. I put that on the desk, I can just remove the card, put it in the card reader and then, or sorry, the hard drive, put it in the reader, and then I can pull the files over on my computer. So that's not a big deal. But if you wanted to use this out in the field, so if you're recording a performance or something like that, it's a little bit more bulky. You have a second moving part, the HDMI cable's a little flimsy, and it may not be the best camera setup for something like that, but it could be done. Me personally, if I'm in the field, it's usually stuff when I'm shooting B-roll of things. I don't really do a lot of interviews that way where I'm not in a studio controlled environment. And I really haven't had the overheating problem. And it's hot in Texas, but if I'm just outside filming B-roll for something that I'm just gonna lay over the top, typically I'm not filming for more than a minute or two and I turn the camera off when I'm not using it. So I really haven't had the heating problems. And believe me, it's hot enough here to really have them. So that hadn't been a big issue. But if you are looking for some kind of workaround and you have one of these Sony cameras and you want to be able to use it for a longer interview or performance, this is the workaround, and it works pretty well. There is an additional step when you're importing your footage, but for the most part, it does pretty well when you consider how much you're getting for the money you're spending between the camera and actually the Hyperdeck Shuttle. It's great. As I mentioned earlier, Atomos has a competing price point model. It's the Ninja Star, and I haven't tried it. The reason that I went with the Hyperdeck is because I didn't want to deal with what they call CFast cards, which is another card I have to have and keep track of, and I have some SSDs, and so that just worked well for me. But anyway, that's the workaround, and I hope you guys have found this useful. Anyway, if you've enjoyed this video, please remember to like it and share it with your friends, and as always, subscribe to The Art of Photography to always stay up to date on the latest and greatest videos that we produce here. So that's all I got for today. Until the next video, see you later.